One moment I was sitting at the dinner table with my son David and his wife Sarah. The next moment David turned to me and coldly said, "Mom, you need to leave." I couldn't believe my ears. My own son, the one I had raised, had just kicked me out at the request of his wife. But the next day, something happened that completely changed everything. You won't believe what came next. Before we dive into today's story, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an amazing story. And if you're already part of the family, thank you for being here. Let's get started with today's incredible journey. For years, I dedicated myself to my family. I raised David with all the love and care a mother could give. Every decision I made was for him, his happiness, his future, and his well-being. When he met Sarah, I welcomed her into our home with open arms. I thought, like any mother, that the family I worked so hard to create would last forever, but nothing could prepare me for what happened just a few days ago. That night, as I sat at the dinner table with David and Sarah, everything seemed fine until the words came crashing down. David, my only son, turned to me and said, "Mom, you need to leave." I froze. It felt like time had stopped. How could he say this to me? How could the person I had given everything to, the person I loved more than anything, ask me to leave my own home? My heart shattered in that moment, but it wasn't just David's decision, it was Sarah's too. The way she stood behind him, her eyes cold, it became clear she had influenced him. I had been a mother to her as well, but I felt the distance, the tension building. The worst part wasn't just being told to leave, it was the complete lack of explanation, the complete absence of compassion. I walked out that night, my heart in pieces, not knowing where to go, feeling like a stranger in my own life. And then, the next day, something happened that would change everything, something I wasn't prepared for. The truth was about to come out, and I had no idea what it would mean for me, for David, or for our future. For as long as I can remember, David was the center of my world. I was a single mother, and every decision I made, every sacrifice I endured, was for him. From the moment he was born, I poured all my love and energy into raising him. He was my pride, my joy. We had our rough patches, of course, every parent and child do, but we always found our way back to each other. I thought that bond was unbreakable. As David grew older, we had our disagreements, as any family does, but nothing serious. I did my best to understand him, to give him space to grow, but still, he was my son. I always made sure he knew I was there for him, no matter what. Then came Sarah. When David introduced her to me, I could see that she was special to him. I did everything I could to welcome her into our family, hoping she would become a daughter to me. I wanted to believe she was the one for him. But over time, something started to change. Sarah became more distant, more controlling in subtle ways. At first I brushed it off. Maybe I was just overthinking things. But as the months passed, I noticed David becoming more distant as well. He was still my son, but he seemed different. More guarded, less open. There were fewer family dinners, fewer moments of laughter together. Sarah was always there, always present, and yet something felt off. I tried reaching out, tried to talk to David about it, but each time I was met with excuses or deflection. It became clear that Sarah had a growing influence over him. There were things I began to hear from family members and friends, whispers about how she didn't really want me around, how she felt uncomfortable with me in their space. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to accept that someone I had tried so hard to love could feel that way about me, but no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the truth became clearer every day. The distance between us grew, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own family. I thought I was being paranoid, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. My relationship with David was changing, and no matter how much I loved him, it seemed like it was slipping away. I could feel Sarah's influence in everything. She had turned David against me, slowly, without me even realizing it. The signs were subtle, but they were there. Like the way David would avoid eye contact, or how he would side with Sarah in small arguments. I began to wonder if I had done something wrong. Was I too much of a mother? Had I become a burden to him? Could it be that Sarah was right? Was I the problem in this equation? The thought consumed me, but I couldn't bring myself to confront either of them. I held on to hope that things would get better, that the love I had for David would be enough to fix whatever was happening. But the truth was staring me in the face, and I was too afraid to see it until that fateful night. That night, when David told me to leave? It started like any other evening. David, Sarah, and I had just finished dinner together. The atmosphere felt normal, nothing out of the ordinary. We laughed about something trivial, and I thought for a moment that maybe, just maybe, things were starting to feel like they once had. But I couldn't have been more wrong. It was after dinner when David looked at me with a certain coldness in his eyes. At first, I thought it was just the fatigue of a long day, but his gaze didn't shift. His jaw tightened, and I felt a wave of unease wash over me. Then, without any warning, he said the words that would change everything. "Mom, you need to leave." I froze. My heart stopped. My stomach dropped. I stared at him, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I thought maybe I had misheard him. "David, what do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. He repeated it, this time with more authority. "You need to leave now." I looked to Sarah, who was standing behind him, her face expressionless, almost cold. It hit me then, the reality of what was happening. This wasn't just David's decision. I could see it in Sarah's eyes, the silent support she gave him. She had orchestrated this, she had planted the seed in his mind, and now it was growing into something that would tear us apart. I felt my heart shatter. I couldn't understand why this was happening, why David, my son, the one I had sacrificed everything for, was turning on me. "Why?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. But there was no answer. David just looked at me, the once loving son who had always been there for me, now a stranger in front of me. "I don't want to argue," he said. "Just go. It's for the best." I couldn't comprehend his words. I couldn't make sense of why I was being treated this way. The mother who had loved him unconditionally, the mother who had raised him, was now being cast aside. I stood there, in complete shock, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go. It wasn't until David began to turn away that I finally found the strength to speak again. "Please, David, don't do this. I'm your mother," I pleaded. But my voice was lost. He didn't respond. He just turned, walking away without a second glance. Sarah, silent as ever, stood by his side, her eyes looking down, almost as if she were indifferent to the pain she had just caused. My mind was racing. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, sadness, confusion. It was all there. I felt as if my entire world had been ripped apart in that single moment. I had never expected this from David. Never. Without a word, I gathered a few things in a bag and left the house. The door clicked shut behind me, and I felt a wave of emptiness wash over me. As I walked down the driveway, I couldn't help but think that I was leaving a part of me behind. How could this have happened? How had everything gone so wrong? I walked through the night, aimlessly, not knowing where I was going. I didn't care. All that mattered was the pain I felt in my heart. I spent that night in a hotel, alone, my heart broken. I couldn't stop crying. How had my own son turned against me like this? The thoughts consumed me, but there was no answer. Just a hollow, aching emptiness. And then, as the sun began to rise the next morning, I received a text message from David. The words that appeared on my phone were simple, but they shook me to my core. "We need to talk." The moment I saw those words, my heart began to race. Was there hope for reconciliation? Or was this just another twist in the painful story unfolding before me? I didn't know, but what happened next would change everything. I spent that entire night in a haze, struggling to process what had just happened. The pain was unbearable. How could David do this to me? I kept asking myself that question over and over again, as if the answer would somehow make sense. But there was no answer, just silence, a silence that spoke louder than any words could. The next morning, I woke up to the reality of it all. I was alone. My son had kicked me out, and Sarah, the woman I had welcomed into our family, had stood by, silent, allowing it to happen. I sat in that hotel room for hours, staring at the walls, my mind racing. My heart was a mess of emotions, sadness, anger, confusion. David had always been my son, the one I had devoted my life to. I had done everything for him. I sacrificed my own happiness, my own dreams, to make sure he had everything he needed. And now, this was how he repaid me? It felt like a cruel joke. It felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I tried calling David several times, but he wouldn't answer. My heart broke more with each passing minute. What was happening? Why was he avoiding me? Was this it? Was this the end of our relationship? As the day dragged on, I couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment. The world outside felt distant, unreal, like I was in a dream. I kept replaying the events in my mind, the look on David's face, the way Sarah stood behind him, the coldness in his voice. It all felt so wrong. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David standing there, turning his back on me. It felt like a betrayal so deep, so painful, that I couldn't even begin to comprehend it. I spent the entire day in a daze, unsure of what to do. I had no home to return to, no family to turn to. I felt like I had lost everything. The only person who had been my anchor, my constant, was now the one who had pushed me out of my own life. I had been cast aside as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience, a burden. As the hours passed, I felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. I had no one to talk to, no one to turn to. My friends had no answers, and my family, though sympathetic, couldn't offer any real comfort. All I had left was the empty space where my relationship with David used to be. I sat there, thinking about all the memories we shared, the birthdays, the holidays, the quiet nights at home, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever get those moments back. Could we ever repair what had been broken? But then, something unexpected happened. As the sun began to set, I received a message from David. I could feel my heart race as I read it. "We need to talk." I don't know what made me open the message, what drove me to reply, but I did. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was desperation. I didn't know if this would be the moment of reconciliation I had prayed for, or another twist in the painful story I was living. But one thing was certain. I had to know the truth. I had to know if there was any hope left for my relationship with David. But what happened next was more than I could have ever expected. The next few days felt like a blur. Every time I looked at my phone, I couldn't help but check for any new messages from David, but the silence was deafening. I tried to reach out, but he continued to ignore me. Each unanswered call, each message left unread, felt like another piece of my heart being torn away. I couldn't understand why this was happening, why David was treating me this way. Was this truly his choice? Was there something more? I kept asking myself, what went wrong? What did I miss? The questions consumed me. For days I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just sat there, staring at the walls, waiting for answers that didn't seem to come. I replayed every conversation, every interaction, trying to find the moment when things started to unravel, but I couldn't pinpoint it. Was I too harsh? Had I been too protective of him? Was Sarah right in wanting me to step back, or was David really the one making the decisions? Then finally, after what felt like an eternity, David reached out. It wasn't much. Just a text. "Can we meet?" I didn't hesitate for a moment. My heart was pounding in my chest as I read the words. I immediately agreed, my mind racing with a million thoughts. What was he going to say? Would he apologize? Would he explain why he did what he did? Or was this going to be another chance for Sarah to manipulate him? I agreed to meet him at a small cafe in the city. It was a neutral spot, away from the tension of home. When I arrived, I saw David sitting at a table by the window. He looked tired, his face weary. But when he saw me, his eyes hardened, and for a moment, I could see the walls he had built around himself. He wasn't the son I remembered, the son who used to run to me for comfort, who would share his thoughts and dreams. No, this man sitting in front of me was a stranger. I sat down across from him, my heart racing. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at his coffee, lost in thought. I didn't know what to say either, but I had to know what was going on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, he spoke. "I didn't want it to be like this, Mom," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. But there was something off about it. The words didn't match the coldness in his eyes. "I didn't know what to do. Sarah, she said you were a problem. She said you were suffocating me, that you were interfering in our marriage. I didn't know who to believe." I felt my heart drop. Sarah. It all made sense now. I had suspected it, but hearing David say it out loud was like a punch to the gut. "You let her control you?" I asked, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. He flinched, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of the sun I once knew, but it was gone in an instant. "I didn't want to, Mom. I didn't want to hurt you. But she said I needed to choose, and I chose her." His voice broke, but he quickly masked it. "I thought it was what was best for us. I thought it was what would make Sarah happy." I could feel the tears rising, but I fought them back. "You chose her over me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything I've done for you? After all these years, you chose her?" David looked away, unable to answer. The silence between us was suffocating. I could see the internal struggle in his eyes. He was torn between the woman he had married and the mother who had always been there for him. But in the end, he made his choice. And that choice was Sarah. I sat there numb, trying to process everything. The realization hit me like a freight train. Sarah had been slowly poisoning David's mind, turning him against me, but I couldn't understand why. What had I ever done to her? Why was she so determined to break us apart? I looked at David, my son, the person I had given my everything to. He was lost, confused, caught in a web of manipulation that I couldn't undo. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him that I loved him, that I would always be there for him no matter what. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive him for this. As I sat there, staring at the boy I had raised, I realized that the relationship we once had might never be the same. The damage had been done, and I didn't know how we would move forward. But one thing was certain: I needed to find a way to heal, to forgive, to move on. But the question remained: could I ever heal from this betrayal? Could I ever get back the son I lost? The days following my meeting with David were some of the hardest of my life. I went over everything he said again and again, trying to make sense of it all. The words he spoke haunted me: how he had been manipulated, how Sarah had slowly turned him against me. But still, a part of me couldn't fully accept it. David was an adult now. He made his own decisions. I couldn't blame Sarah entirely, and yet, every time I thought about it, I felt betrayed all over again. It wasn't just the fact that David had chosen Sarah over me, but how he seemed so distant, so lost. It felt like I had lost my son, the one who used to run to me for comfort, for advice. But life had a way of surprising me. Just when I thought everything was slipping through my fingers, something unexpected happened. It was late one evening when I received an email from David. I hadn't heard from him in days. I thought the silence was final, his way of cutting me off completely. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk again." My heart raced when I saw it. I had no idea what it meant, but something inside me told me that this wasn't just another apology. Something had shifted. I opened the email, my hands trembling. The message was brief but shocking. "Mom, I made a huge mistake. I know I hurt you, and I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need to talk. Please, meet me tomorrow. It's urgent." The message was unsettling, yet there was something in it that gave me hope. I couldn't ignore it. Maybe this was my chance to fix things, to understand where David's head was at. I quickly replied, agreeing to meet him the following day. When we met, I noticed immediately that David seemed different. His eyes were red, as though he hadn't slept in days. There was a desperation in his voice that I hadn't heard before. "I need to tell you something," he said before I could speak. "I've been thinking about everything. About you, about Sarah, about the way I've treated you. And I realize now that I've made a terrible mistake. Sarah, she's been telling me things about you. Things that weren't true. And I believed her." I stared at him, not knowing what to say. He continued, almost like he couldn't stop, the words rushing out of him. "She made me believe that you were trying to control me, that you were always in the way. I didn't see it at first, but now I know she was manipulating me." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had suspected that Sarah was behind it all, but to hear David admit it, his voice shaking with regret, was something I wasn't prepared for. My mind raced. If this was true, it meant that everything that had happened, all the pain I had endured, was built on lies, on manipulation. "I don't know what to do, Mom," David said, his voice breaking. "I love Sarah, but I know now that I've lost you. I can't take back what I did, but I want to fix things. I want to be your son again." I sat there, stunned. A part of me wanted to pull him into my arms, to tell him everything would be okay, to forgive him. But another part of me couldn't let go of the pain. How could I trust him again? How could I trust that Sarah wasn't still influencing him in the background? How could I ever go back to the way things were? David continued, his eyes full of guilt. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect things to go back to normal. But I need you to know that I realize what I've done. I've lost the most important person in my life, and I can't live with that." I looked at him, my heart torn. I could see that David was genuinely remorseful, but I didn't know if I could trust him again. Was this truly the David I raised? Or was this just another side of him I hadn't seen before? The man sitting in front of me felt like a stranger, yet I knew that deep down he was still my son. "What do you want me to do, David?" I finally asked, my voice shaky. He took a deep breath and said, "I need your help. I can't fix this on my own. I need you to help me see through the fog. Please, Mom. I'm sorry for everything." As he spoke, I realized something. The road to healing would not be easy, but it was a road I couldn't ignore. The betrayal, the pain, it was still fresh, still raw. But if there was even a chance that David could come back to me, that I could get my son back, I had to at least try. The decision wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where David and I could find our way back to each other. But little did I know, what happened next would change everything once again. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. David and I kept in contact, but the tension between us was palpable. He had apologized, admitted to his mistakes, and expressed regret for pushing me away. But despite everything, a part of me still struggled to forgive him. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off, that there was more I didn't know. Finally, I decided it was time to confront David again, face to face, once and for all. I needed answers. I needed closure. I couldn't live with the lingering questions in my mind, the nagging doubt that maybe, just maybe, I was still being lied to. I couldn't trust Sarah, and I needed to know where David truly stood. When we met again, the air was thick with unspoken words. We sat across from each other at a small park bench, and I looked into David's eyes, searching for any sign of honesty, for any hint that he was truly telling me the truth. "I need to know everything, David," I said, my voice steady, but with a firmness I hadn't had before. "I need to know what Sarah told you, what she said about me. Don't leave anything out." David looked away for a moment, his hands fidgeting with the sleeves of his jacket. I could tell he was hesitant, still unsure of how much to reveal. But I needed him to be honest. I needed him to face the truth, even if it hurt. Finally, he sighed and looked me in the eyes. "She said you were controlling, that you didn't trust me with her. She made it sound like you were always trying to interfere with our lives, that you were a threat to our marriage." He paused and looked away again, his guilt weighing heavily on him. "And I believed her, Mom. I thought she was just trying to protect us. I thought she was right. A wave of hurt washed over me. Sarah had twisted everything I had done out of love for David into something sinister. The woman I had welcomed into my life, into my family, had been poisoning David's mind for months, if not longer. And David, my son, had fallen for it. "You believed her over me?" I asked, my voice cracking. The pain was almost unbearable. I had given David everything. I had spent my life protecting him, loving him unconditionally. And yet, he had believed the lies that Sarah had told him. "I didn't want to, Mom," David replied, his voice filled with regret. But I was too afraid to question her. I thought I was doing the right thing by supporting her. But now I know I was wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have seen through her lies. I looked at him, my heart aching. "You've been manipulated, David. You've been tricked into believing things about me that aren't true. I've always been here for you, always. I never wanted to control your life. I just wanted to be a part of it." For a moment, there was silence. David stared at his feet, clearly struggling with the weight of his actions. I could see the internal conflict in his eyes, the guilt and shame he felt for having believed Sarah over me. And while that gave me a small sense of relief, it didn't erase the hurt. It didn't erase the fact that I had been pushed away by the very person I loved most. "Do you think we can fix this?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I sighed deeply, my heart torn. "I don't know, David. I don't know if things can ever be the same, but I want to try. I need you to prove to me that you truly want to rebuild our relationship, that you are willing to fight for it, even if it means confronting Sarah and the lies she's been feeding you." David nodded, a look of determination crossing his face. "I will, Mom. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes." In that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. David seemed to be taking responsibility for his actions, for the way he had let Sarah come between us. He seemed to realize the gravity of what had happened, and that was a start. But there was still a long road ahead. Trust had been broken. The damage had been done. I couldn't just forgive him instantly, and I couldn't expect everything to magically heal. We had to work through it together. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew that if David was willing to fight for our relationship, maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. As I left the park that day, I felt both exhausted and hopeful. The truth had come out, and while the pain of what had happened was still fresh, it felt like a new chapter was beginning, one where healing could start, one where we could slowly begin to rebuild what had been broken. But the question still lingered in my heart. Would David and I ever fully heal from the betrayal, or would the scars of this experience haunt us forever? It's been weeks since that day at the park. David and I have been trying to rebuild what we lost, but it hasn't been easy. There are moments when everything feels like it's back to normal, like the bond we once shared is slowly healing. Then there are moments when the weight of everything hits me again. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. But I'm trying, and so is David. That's the most important thing. I'm learning that healing is not a linear process. There are ups and downs, setbacks and progress. David is trying to make amends, and I'm trying to forgive. It's a slow journey, one filled with hard conversations and uncomfortable truths. But for the first time in a long while, I feel like there's hope. Hope that David and I can find our way back to each other, even if it takes time. I've realized that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting go of the pain completely. It means choosing to move forward, to try again, despite everything that's happened. And while Sarah is still a part of David's life, I can't control that. I can only control my relationship with my son. I can't force him to see things the way I do, but I can encourage him to think for himself, to recognize the truth. There are still a lot of unanswered questions, and there are still moments when I feel like I'm losing him again, but I'm holding on, for him and for myself. I've learned that love is not always easy. Sometimes it's messy, complicated, and painful, but it's worth it. The relationship we had, the family we built, is worth fighting for. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure. I won't give up on David. He's my son, and I love him, no matter what. And if there's a chance, even the smallest chance, that we can heal from this, I'm willing to take it. I'll keep trying, because at the end of the day, love is about forgiveness, patience, and the willingness to fight for each other, even when it feels impossible. If you've gone through something similar, if you've experienced betrayal or felt like you've lost a loved one, know that you are not alone. Healing takes time, but it is possible. Don't give up on love, even when it seems like everything is falling apart. If you can relate to my story, or if you've ever faced a challenge in your family, I'd love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's struggling right now. And if this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. Together, we can support each other and find strength in our stories. Stay strong, and thank you for listening to mine.